When Bishop Marvin Winans called out Christians in Greek organizations, the church world braced for impact, but no one expected Pastor William Murphy to clap back like this. In a bold, unapologetic statement, Murphy didn't just defend himself, he defended an entire generation of believers. What's really going on behind these church versus Greek life tensions? You're about to find out, and trust me, it gets deep. The church world is no stranger to disagreement, but when respected leaders like Bishop Marvin Winans and Pastor William Murphy end up on opposite sides of the pulpit, the tension isn't just personal. It becomes a public spectacle. And this time, the hot topic dividing the saints, Greek life in the church. It all started when Bishop Winans made a bold and controversial statement during a recent sermon, implying that Christians who pledge allegiance to fraternities and sororities may be aligning themselves with idolatry and ungodly covenants. The room fell silent. The internet, on the other hand, it exploded. But what really caught the gospel world off guard was how quickly and fiercely William Murphy responded. In a fiery rebuttal, Pastor Murphy didn't just challenge Winans' message. He called out the church for hypocrisy, gatekeeping, and generational disconnects that continue to alienate young believers who also proudly represent their Greek organizations. And if you thought this was just another theological spat, think again. This clash has unleashed deep conversations about identity, church culture, tradition, and the ongoing struggle between old school holiness and modern Christian expression. It's not just a debate, it's a full-blown reckoning. You won't believe what's been said, what's being exposed, and who else is quietly taking sides. Because while most church folk are trying to stay neutral behind the scenes, lines are being drawn. To understand this growing firestorm, we need to go back to the moment Marvin Winans struck the match. During a Sunday sermon at his Detroit-based church, Perfecting Church, Bishop Winans veered into what some thought would be a typical message about consecration and spiritual loyalty. But what he said next quickly took a sharp turn into controversy. With a firm tone and a piercing gaze, Marvin Winans declared, "How can you pledge to Alpha, Kappa, Omega, or Delta and still pledge allegiance to the cross? You can't serve two masters. That's not fellowship. It's idolatry." The congregation froze. Some responded with quiet amens, unsure of whether to fully agree. Others simply sat in stunned silence. But one thing was clear, this wasn't just a passing opinion. Winans was drawing a theological line in the sand, and it wasn't the first time. Those who followed Marvin Winans over the years know he's no stranger to challenging modern expressions of faith, especially when it comes to younger generations adopting trends that stray from traditional Pentecostal holiness. However, this time, his comments were more than theological. They felt personal to many. Because here's the thing. Fraternities and sororities have deep roots in the Black community. For decades, Divine Nine organizations like Alpha Phi Alpha, Delta Sigma Theta, Zeta Phi Beta, and Omega Psi Phi have not only offered social uplift and leadership training, but have also stood at the front lines of civil rights, community organizing, and even church leadership. Many pastors, bishops, and worship leaders are proud members of these organizations. So when Marvin Winans suggested that participating in Greek life might be spiritually compromising, he didn't just step on toes, he stomped on legacies. And he didn't stop there. He continued, warning that too many people in the church today are more loyal to colors, calls, and chants than they are to the blood of Jesus. He argued that these affiliations promote secret rituals, misplaced devotion, and a brotherhood that replaces the bond of Christ. His message questioned whether Christians involved in Greek life were making room for unclean spirits in the name of tradition. That's when social media blew up. Clips of his sermon were posted online, sparking thousands of comments, both in support and in outrage. Some praised his boldness, saying he was simply calling the church back to holiness. Others accused him of being out of touch, dismissive, and unfairly targeting Black culture while ignoring the church's own flaws. But no one expected what came next. William Murphy, himself a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi, wasn't just going to stay silent. And what he said next would rock the gospel world. The backlash from Bishop Marvin Winans' sermon was immediate and intense, especially among believers who proudly represent both their Greek affiliations and their Christian faith. But no one's response carried more weight or more fire than that of Pastor William Murphy III, a renowned worship leader, senior pastor of the Dream Center Church of Atlanta, and a longtime member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Inc. Known for hits like Praise is What I Do and It's Working, Murphy is respected across both charismatic and traditional church circles. But this time, he wasn't singing. He was speaking, loudly, clearly, and without apology. Just days after Winans' viral sermon clip began circulating online, Murphy took to his Instagram Live with a direct, emotionally charged response that left little room for confusion. His caption read, "Dear Bishop Winans, we are not your enemies, but we will defend our callings." And from the very beginning of that live stream, you could tell Murphy was hurt, but also fed up. He began by saying, "I honor Bishop Winans. He's a father in the faith, but I can't stay quiet while an entire generation of leaders and believers is dismissed because of ignorance and fear. You cannot demonize what you don't understand." He went on to explain that being part of a Greek organization never negated his faith. In fact, it helped shape it. Kappa Alpha Psi taught me discipline, leadership, service to my community. Those values didn't pull me away from Christ. They prepared me to serve him better. Murphy's voice cracked as he expressed frustration that Black Greek life, a cornerstone of African American education, advancement, and even spirituality, is so often misrepresented or vilified in church settings. How are you going to tell me that the same brotherhood that helped me survive racism on my college campus, the same one that taught me how to serve others, is of the devil? That's not holiness. That's harmful. But Murphy didn't stop at defending himself. He widened the lens, calling out a pattern he believes is crippling the Black church's relevance among younger generations. This is why our kids are leaving the church. Because when they come in here with letters on their chest or ink on their arms or cultural experiences we didn't grow up with, instead of embracing them, we judge them, we accuse them, and then we wonder why they don't come back. In a particularly viral moment, Murphy passionately stated, "I'm not less anointed because I'm a Kappa," and "the Holy Ghost didn't leave me when I crossed those burning sands." That line exploded across social media. Clips of his statement flooded TikTok and Instagram, with many users praising Murphy for standing in the gap for a generation that often feels caught between culture and calling. He then pivoted into a powerful critique of church leadership itself. If we're going to call out something, let's call out the gossip behind the pulpit, the control, the spiritual manipulation. Let's talk about those secret alliances in the church that really destroy lives, not the ones that help kids graduate with honors. Boom, mic drop. Murphy ended his video with grace but conviction, saying, "I love Bishop Winans, but I love the truth more, and the truth is, we've got to do better. Greek life is not our enemy, ignorance is." His response was not only bold, it was healing for many. Pastors, youth leaders, choir directors, and Christian students who've been silenced or shamed for their Greek affiliations began sharing their own testimonies of how their organizations helped them grow spiritually, academically, and emotionally. One Delta Sigma Theta member commented, "William Murphy gave us language for what we've been feeling for years. We love Jesus, and we love our sisterhood. That doesn't make us divided. It makes us real." But of course, not everyone agreed. Some traditional leaders doubled down, warning that Murphy's response was an attempt to justify compromise and blur spiritual lines. The conversation began escalating from private disagreement to a public theological divide. And guess what? Other gospel voices began to weigh in, but not all of them were siding with Murphy. The real storm was just beginning. As William Murphy's powerful response spread like wildfire across social media, YouTube, gospel blogs, and group chats across the country, the church community found itself split, sharply and publicly. One side hailed Murphy as a necessary voice for a generation tired of being misunderstood and policed. The other side? They saw his comments as an alarming departure from holiness and a dangerous normalization of secular identity within sacred spaces. And just like that, this wasn't just a Winans versus Murphy situation anymore. This was a battle of generations, ideologies, and definitions of faith itself. Old school versus new school, a generational clash. Across pulpits and panel discussions, pastors and bishops, especially those over 50, began subtly addressing Murphy's comments, often without naming him directly. Some reasserted the idea that Greek life's secret rituals conflicted with Christianity. Others warned their congregations to be careful not to mix oil with water. One particularly pointed sermon clip surfaced from a well-known bishop who stated, "You can't wear the cross and the crest. One is eternal, one is man-made." But younger pastors, youth ministers, and even seminary professors began pushing back. Some of them pointed out that this wasn't about pledging loyalty to an organization over Christ. It was about embracing identity and culture without condemnation. One millennial pastor tweeted, "If we can wear police badges, Masonic rings, and college degrees in church, why do we only condemn divine 9 letters?" The argument wasn't whether Christ should be at the center, but whether Black Christian culture has become so gatekept that it shames anything unfamiliar or non-traditional. Christian Greek members began posting their own testimonies, sharing how their fraternity or sorority helped pay for their education through scholarships, instilled community service values, encouraged public speaking and leadership, connected them with other Christian believers across campuses, led them to Christ through prayer circles and campus ministries. One Zeta Phi Beta member wrote, "I found Jesus inside my sorority house, not outside of it. My line sisters prayed with me through depression. How dare anyone say God wasn't present?" And then came the podcasts. Religious YouTube panels and Christian podcasts jumped on the controversy quickly, featuring open dialogues between pastors, theologians, and Greek-affiliated believers. One conversation hosted by the Unfiltered Pulpit podcast drew over 500,000 views in its first week. On the episode, a guest pastor said, "What we're really dealing with is a fear of what we don't understand. Instead of discipling this generation, some leaders are dismissing them. That's not shepherding, that's spiritual abuse." This stirred even more discussion. Are some traditional leaders projecting fear instead of offering mentorship? Is the modern church more comfortable condemning culture than engaging it with compassion? Murphy's response had touched a nerve, not just about Greek life, but about who the church makes space for and who it silently excludes. But here's the cliffhanger. Behind the scenes, some gospel artists who had pledged Greek organizations were being told to keep quiet about their affiliations, especially if they were scheduled to appear at conferences, revivals, or on gospel award shows. One anonymous singer said, "My manager literally told me not to post anything with my sorority colors, said it would hurt my ministry image. Hurt my image? This is who I am." The tension wasn't just in the pews anymore. It was affecting bookings, branding, and even public visibility in the gospel industry. Some event organizers even reportedly considered pulling William Murphy from upcoming lineups, fearing backlash from more conservative church circles. But Murphy? He remained unbothered and unbowed. He doubled down in another post saying, "If speaking truth means fewer bookings, so be it. I'm not here for popularity. I'm here for freedom." And just when it felt like the noise might settle down, another gospel giant stepped into the conversation and added fuel to the fire. In the days following William Murphy's unapologetic clapback, the gospel world held its collective breath. Would this debate fade quietly like so many controversial church moments before it? Or would the silence speak louder than words? What happened next shocked everyone. Slowly, gospel artists, musicians, and even a few pastors began showing their hands, some subtly, others boldly. The question wasn't just, "Do you support Murphy?" It was deeper than that. It was, where do you stand on the church's place in Black culture, and vice versa? The silent majority, or fearful of backlash, many of the industry's biggest names stayed eerily quiet. Prominent voices like Tasha Cobbs Leonard, Donnie McClurkin, and Smokey Norfolk refrained from commenting publicly. Not a post, not a tweet, not even a like. And for fans watching closely, that silence was deafening. One blogger posted, "It's wild how gospel artists are quick to speak on Kanye's secular music or LGBTQ+ issues, but the moment it's about our culture, our Black organizations, they freeze." Theories started swirling. Was it fear of losing church bookings? Was it pressure from conservative pastors who bankroll conferences and tours? Or maybe some didn't know where they stood, but others, they spoke up, loud and proud. Supporters of William Murphy start coming forward. Kiera Sheard, gospel artist and Delta Sigma Theta member, was one of the first to post something indirect yet powerful. On Instagram, she shared a throwback picture of herself at a sorority service event with a simple caption, "Sisterhood Service Saved." Thousands liked the post. The message was clear. I'm both, and I'm not ashamed. Shortly after, popular gospel singer and Alpha Kappa Alpha member Lexi Allen took to her YouTube channel with a passionate commentary video. She said, "People keep forgetting God is not threatened by Greek letters. What threatens him is our pride, our judgment, and the way we mishandle each other in his name." Lexi also revealed that she'd been warned by a church not to wear pink and green while ministering. "I was told it might send the wrong message. I said, no, I am the message. And if my colors offend you more than your gossip does, that's your issue." Her video racked up over 300K views in 48 hours, with viewers flooding the comments with their own experiences being shamed or silenced for their Divine Nine affiliations. And then the shade started rolling in. But support wasn't universal. A few traditional leaders and artists, mostly older men, started throwing subtle jabs without directly naming Murphy. One well-known choir director posted, "We've got singers defending idols but silent when souls are lost. Make it make sense." Another, a longtime gospel veteran, tweeted, "Just because it's Black culture doesn't mean it belongs in God's house." These remarks triggered their own wave of responses, especially from younger believers who argued that Black culture and Black Christianity have always been intertwined, from spirituals to civil rights marches to HBCU homecomings. "You can't separate the cookout from the communion table," one Twitter user posted. "They're both where we come together." Then came the leaks. As the debate reached peak levels of visibility, behind-the-scenes drama began surfacing. Anonymous sources leaked that at least 2 major gospel events were reconsidering inviting William Murphy as a headliner. Not because of theological disagreement, but because they didn't want to offend more conservative sponsors or churches. The Dream Center, Murphy's church, was flooded with calls, both supportive and critical. One Sunday, security reportedly had to intervene after a visitor attempted to confront Murphy during service, claiming he was leading people astray. "It's not about Greek life, it's about rebellion," the man reportedly shouted before being escorted out. Murphy later addressed the incident briefly, saying, "I'm not at war with the church, I'm at war with the spirit of fear disguised as tradition." That one line sent shockwaves through Christian Twitter. Again. But the most unexpected twist? Marvin Winans still hadn't publicly responded, and that silence? It began to raise more questions than answers. Was he choosing maturity, or was he avoiding accountability? Either way, people were starting to wonder if he really believed what he said. Why not stand on it now? By now, it's clear this wasn't just a disagreement between William Murphy and Marvin Winans. This became a mirror for the modern Black church, reflecting deeper cracks, hidden fears, and long-standing cultural tensions that many have been too afraid to name out loud. Because when you strip away the surface of Greek life versus holiness, what you're really looking at is this: who gets to define what it means to be saved in 2025? And the answer isn't as simple as some pastors might like to believe. Spirituality isn't one size fits all. Anymore, today's believers, especially millennials and Gen Z, are no longer subscribing to a rigid, rule-based model of Christianity. They're asking questions, they're exploring their identity, and they're pushing back when tradition starts to feel like control, disguised as sanctification. This isn't a rebellion. It's a reformation. William Murphy stood in that space unapologetically. His message wasn't anything goes, it was this: you can be filled with the Holy Ghost and still honor your fraternity. You can be a worship leader and still wear your letters with pride. You can love Jesus and still be authentically you. This stands in direct contrast to a generation of older church leaders who often view culture as a threat to consecration instead of a bridge to connection. They fear that embracing cultural identities waters down the gospel. But what if it actually strengthens it? The foundation is shifting. In light of this clash, churches across the country are now having real conversations behind closed doors. Should church leaders openly disclose their Greek affiliations? Is it time to revisit how the church approaches cultural expression? Can we have both tradition and transformation? Some ministries are now hosting forums, bringing in scholars, theologians, and Divine Nine members to help their congregations understand what Greek life truly represents, beyond the fear-based assumptions. Meanwhile, some young Christians who once felt rejected are returning to church spaces where they now feel seen. I used to hide my AKA membership at church. Now I wear my pink and green with freedom, said one young woman after Murphy's message went viral. That's the power of moments like this. They shift the atmosphere. What we learned from this controversy. The Black church is evolving, and those unwilling to evolve with it risk being left behind, not in theology, but in relevance. Cultural identity doesn't equal compromise. Greek life, tattoos, music tastes, or even fashion choices don't cancel someone's salvation. Leaders must listen. The era of top-down, unquestioned authority is fading. The people, especially the youth, are asking for dialogue, not dictatorship. Silence is no longer neutral. In the digital age, refusing to speak on controversial issues is often seen as complicity or fear. People are watching, and they're remembering who stayed quiet. And William Murphy, he's not backing down. In a recent message at the Dream Center, he closed his sermon with this: you don't have to strip yourself of your story to be accepted by God. He made you, he knew you, and he anointed you, not your imitation of someone else. That line brought the congregation to its feet and sent a message far beyond the walls of his sanctuary.